Hey All-Stars, we're ready for slide number 8, Part D, reactions of the Second Continental Congress. Number 1, what is the thing that the colonists offered to King George? It was a final plea for peace. And hopefully you said the Olive Branch Petition. Olive Branch Petition. Now, let me make a comparison. Let's say I had a student who didn't care. She made straight F's. Her name was Sarah Miller. She never did any work. She never studied. And so I said to her, I tell you what, Sarah, I'll meet you in the library before school every day for a week to help you study for this test. Now, I know in advance she's going to tell me no. But I make the offer anyway. And why do I do that? And the reason is, it makes me look good. Because when I talk to her parents at like a parent-teacher conference, and they say to me, why is my daughter flunking your class? I'm going to say, hey, I offered to help her study, but she said no. Okay? This is what I do with the Olive Branch Petition. We knew George III would say no, but we offered it anyway, so the rest of the world would think we were the good guys and the British were the total bad guys. We looked good because we made a final plea for peace. Fill in at the end of number 1 that George III refused this, and we knew he was going to. Number 2, read that one to yourself, the Declaration of Causes. I gave you the whole thing. That's just a big pamphlet. Just read that to yourself really quickly. Let's go on to number 3. They ordered an attack on Canada. Fill in Canada. Number 4, they authorized a navy under, Freddie, will you hand me that paper? Thank you, Freddie. Ezek Hopkins. I believe that's short for Ezekiel. He's a guy you've never heard of, and 99% of Americans have never heard of Ezek Hopkins. There will be a big naval hero in this war, though. We'll talk about him later. I believe we looked it up last year, and there's an Ezek Hopkins Elementary School somewhere in the East. It's probably his only claim to fame at this point. Number 5, something they didn't do, fill in, declare independence. They did not declare independence yet. Okay? Surprisingly, they didn't. All right, next slide. Roman numeral 3, declaring independence. I put final straws. You've probably heard the expression before, young man, that was the final straw. Or maybe young lady, that was the final straw. Kind of a variation on the straw that broke the camel's back. Number 1, George III hired 30,000 Hessians to fight us. These guys were mercenaries or professional soldiers from what's now Germany. They were from Hesse County in what's now Germany. So fill in modern-day Germany. Now, back in the 1700s, there is no such thing as Germany. Germany was created in 1870. Bavaria, Prussia, and some other things came together to become Germany. So I hate it when textbooks call them Germans, because at this point, they're really not. Next bullet. They were known for looting. L-O-O-T-I-N-G. Looting is a really low crime. It is stealing after things like natural disasters, such as the hurricanes going on now. Some of the military people are in Florida and Texas and so forth just to try to prevent people from looting. All right, next slide. Thomas Paine wrote what pamphlet? Okay, something that people accuse me of not having, Common Sense. Common Sense, next bullet, was an easy-to-read pamphlet which put many opinions against George III and Britain. He said corruption is inherent with a monarchy. Fill in monarchy. Now normally I go through a long explanation of that bullet, and that's something I'll talk about when I get back. Next bullet. Ironically, Paine had only been in the colonies for a year, and at one point he had been a British tax collector. We're complaining about the taxes, and Paine at one point was a tax collector. That's very ironic. Please ask Mrs. Verdine what ironic means. Okay? The other thing is he'd only been here a year, and here he writes this big stinging condemnation of England and the king. which is interesting. Every year I make a comparison. I always ask, is there anybody new to Mount Vernon this year? And I ask them what school they went to before, and I say, oh, you went to New Palestine last year. What if this year you came to the Mount Vernon New Pal game and you had a big sign that said "Death to New Pal" and you were throwing eggs at the New Pal players when you came in? And that's kind of the equivalent of what Thomas Paine actually did. All right, let's go on to B, Declaration of Independence. First bullet, it was suggested by, this is a name we had before in the last chapter, Richard Henry Lee. Richard Henry Lee. And as I said before, he is a relative of Robert E. Lee, but of course Robert E. Lee has not been born yet. Now, it was supposed to be written by a committee of 5, fill in 5, but you all know that the person who did all the work, or 90-some% of the work, was, of course, Freddie, who was it? Ooh, Thomas Jefferson did it all. Yes, Thomas Jefferson did most of it. Now, as I asked you guys once before this year, how many of you have ever been assigned by your parents to do a big yard work job at home, and your brothers and sisters and you were supposed to do all the work, but you ended up doing all the work? Well, that's how Jefferson, I'm sure, felt about this. Now, the next bullet is extremely important. Fill in, he did not really want to do it. He did not really want to do it. Okay? Now, the reason that's important, it turned out to be one of the greatest writings in the history of the world. And he didn't even want to do it. So next time Mr. O'Malley gives you a big math assignment and you don't feel like doing it, do your best anyway. All right, last slide. Part 1, justified the revolt and the theory of, fill in, representative governments. Representative government. You can abbreviate government G-O-V-T. Next bullet, fill in natural rights. Okay, Jefferson was saying that all men have natural rights and the government serves to protect our rights. Okay. Third bullet, fill in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Freddie's right, the pursuit of happiness. Freddie's pursuit of happiness right now would be to have a hamburger, I think. All right, next bullet. Grievances against George III. The second part of the Declaration of Independence isn't really the well-written, remembered part. It's just a big, big, long list of things that they're mad about George III for. Okay? And finally, the last bullet. The vote was taken on, fill in, July 2nd, 1776. Most people don't realize that. We celebrate, though, on July 4th because they released it on July the 4th. John Adams, by the way, he thought we should celebrate every year on July 2nd instead of July 4th, since that's when the vote was taken. But Adams did not win out on that, obviously. You should know something about John Hancock's signature. What is famous about that? Think about that. And we want to film Mikey. Mikey says hello. Thank you very much. Please behave for your substitute. I will make another video for you for Friday. Thank you.